Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey everybody, Wendy Sellers here, the HR lady. I am here with my co-host, JC. Hey, JC.
Hey, Wendy, it's a pleasure to be back. How are you?
You know, it's a loaded question these days. A lot of change, but I've gotten really good at pivoting, fortunately. So here we are. We have an amazing guest here today. Have you checked out her website and her LinkedIn? That is so cool.
What guest?
Who?
You kidding me?
Grace.
The legendary Cheryl Grace, Wendy Sellers. And if I'm not mistaken, that's powerfulpenny.com. Is that right?
It is. Powerfulpenny.com.
Hey, Cheryl. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
So you kind of do it all. You're an executive coach, you're a speaker, you're a change management specialist, a conflict resolution expert. Oh, we never have conflict. What do we need that for? I read on your, I think it was on your LinkedIn that your goal is to help companies reduce employee attrition, improve workplace culture, yes, please, and retain top talent. So welcome so much. Thanks for your time today. And why don't you tell us and your listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today as the CEO of Powerful Penny?
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for having me on. It is a thrill to be here. You know, I spent about more than 30 years actually working in corporate America. And for years in my last role where I was with the company for 18 years, I co-chaired our company's global women's employee resource group. We had more than 4,000 members. And over those years, I had women from all ranks who were reaching out to me on the down low. And I'm talking my DMs through the company intranet, LinkedIn, social media, you name it. And so many of the stories were the same, regardless as to wherever they lived. They were frustrated. They felt like they were being overlooked for promotions, or they were being talked over in meetings. They were burned out because they were trying to do it all. And yet they still felt like they were never fully being recognized for all of that hard work that they were doing. And I knew exactly what they were going through because I had actually lived it. I'd climbed to the top of corporate America. I'd climbed that ladder, but I basically felt like I had to build most of the ladder myself as I'd climb. And I didn't want other women, especially women of color, to have to endure that same kind of level of struggle and the silence that you kind of face in some of those corporate corridors. So I started Powerful Penny as a side hustle while I was still an executive. And once I left corporate, I doubled down. And I got certified as an executive coach, and I invested in the training, and I merged it with all of my real world leadership experience so that I could provide all of the information and insights that executives and middle managers and even entry level folks need as they're coming into corporate America, that would make them feel confident in their roles. And I provided corporations with the information that they needed to make their employees feel like they were developing holistically so that they could retain them. Because honestly, if you are not happy at work, in love, and at home, what good is being successful at work if you're struggling in your personal life, if your personal life is a mess or your health is hanging on by a thread? So Powerful Penny literally exists to help people stop running on like autopilot and start leading with real intentional power. So we help companies, we help them guide in how to retain their human capital.
Ms. Cheryl, I got to jump in. I've got a question right here. I was joking around in the beginning, as some may have tried to infer a little bit, you know, when I'm referring to you as being legendary. But if I go into the Wayback Train, into my own history, and if I think about my time in broadcasting, the name Cheryl Grace stands out to me. It stands out to me, and I'm going to drop some names here for no reason other than history and the sake of how prophetic it really is that we have you on the program, and people may not fully comprehend the totality of your legend and status. If I'm not mistaken, you do have that history with Nielsen, and that goes back a long time. And you, if I'm not mistaken, pioneered some interesting and key data sets at Nielsen and was actually honored as one of the 50 most powerful women in business at one point in time. And you are truly a legend of Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. Am I wrong?
You're so right, and thank you for sharing that. Thank you. I've been married for the last 9 years, so I've been Cheryl Grace for 9 years. But before that, I was Cheryl Pearson McNeil, and yes, so during my 18-year tenure at Nielsen, I led and pioneered a series of studies on multicultural consumers and the buying power that they brought to the U.S. economy. And we championed the importance of that consumerism and that buying power. And at that time, I think it was like in totality, like $5.3 trillion of buying power that multicultural consumers bought to the U.S. economy. And that was something that wasn't touted before, frankly, these reports and studies. So, yeah, it was something that we kind of pioneered, and we worked with consumer packaged goods companies and media companies. So the Disneys and the Targets of the world and the Walmarts and, all of the media brands and the consumer packaged goods companies of the world kind of galvanized around that.
And Ms. Cheryl, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to dig too deep into the history, but I'm doing this for a reason for our listeners. Sometimes when we meet someone, what we're learning about them right now and what we learn in this moment, there's a totality of investment into that human that goes so much deeper than the amazingness that we see in front of us. Powerful Penny stands on its own. It stands on its own, but you as a human, you've done so much. I just commend you. I couldn't help but jump in right here in the beginning and just give you some.
So sweet. Thank you so much.
And then on top of that, you just mentioned all of this stuff that you've done, all of your career, and then you've also just got the coaching certification. That's hard to get. So congratulations. That's a huge, huge commitment. And I myself am honored that you're on the show. We're very happy to hear from you. And we want to jump in and start asking, a little bit more questions about leadership, or let's face it, the lack of leadership, right? And rethinking leadership, rethinking culture and the work-life truths. I have a big saying, in my life, just like, I focus on reality, and not all companies do, right? Not all people focus on reality. So my question is, since you have helped shape countless leaders and countless organizations, what experiences or personal moments pushed you to create Powerful Penny?
Yeah, I think it was when I spent all of that time coaching women who were coming to me on the side and asking for support. Cheryl, I'm not being seen, I'm not being heard. And I would start coaching them, and they would start getting the promotions, right? They would start speaking up in the meetings. And what I found was that all of the concerns that I was hearing, regardless as to where they were in the world, they were pretty consistent. Women not feeling valued, not sure how to have some of those difficult conversations with their managers, not sure why they were being overlooked, how they were getting pigeonholed, and how they were not asserting themselves. There were some consistent themes that I was hearing, and I wanted to make sure that you weren't stuck on a struggle bus that I had already been on or that I had already helped people off of. And so we started to shape and develop our strategy at Powerful Penny around some of those themes. So I just kind of doubled down on making sure that people were invested in training themselves, on making sure that their confidence. Women are so not confident in themselves that we will talk ourselves out of something before anybody has a chance. And it blows my mind because my male clients don't face some of those same types of obstacles. They will come in like they're on 10 when they probably should be on a 4, right. But they have the confidence of someone riding on a wavelength of a 10. But our women who should be on a 10, they'll come in on like a 5 or a 4.
Right. Yeah.
And it's amazing how we talk ourselves out of something before anyone has an opportunity to.
Yeah, absolutely. So for our listeners, if you do need an accountability coach, I think between the two of us, we could kick in the pants a little bit. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
now I wanted to take a little bit of a pivot here and talk about like the new normal or the lack of new normal, versus remote workers, in-person workers. I mean, so much has changed in the past couple years. People have been working remotely for a long, long time, but the masses are now working remotely. And you've said that the push to return to the office threatens the most important benefit companies can offer. What is this?
So I think that the biggest benefit that companies can offer right now is simply flexibility, right?
Yep.
So I think the pandemic taught us so much. People, especially your high performing talent, they want agency over their time. They've proven in the time that we spent working from home during the pandemic, they've proven that they can be productive without being chained to a desk. And when leaders ignore that, you're sending a message that control matters more than outcomes.
Yep.
And that can be a really expensive lesson. It can be a really expensive outcome. So if you just take a look at the numbers, 2024 Willis Towers Watson report found that 76% of company leaders believe that in-person time boosts engagement and that it strengthens culture, which is important. But here's the catch. 53% of employees say that they're going to consider quitting if they're forced to return to work full time. So that is half of your workforce thinking about walking out the door. And if you think about replacing just one worker, and you think about the fact that replacing one worker can cost up to 2 times more than their annual salary, and you multiply that over all of the folks that are thinking about walking out, it's really expensive problem to have. So you have to find some kind of a middle ground. And so one of the things that I recommend to my corporate clients is a structured hybrid model where you may have in-office days that are really clearly defined and strategically planned. So for example, what's that look like, Cheryl? So that looks like maybe Mondays and Thursdays are set collaboration days. And that's where your departments meet face to face for your brainstorming or your team planning or your onboarding days, right? So, or maybe those are your all hands on meetings or your membership luncheons. So those are days that you have where it's worth me commuting in so that I have that engagement. Not something that I could just do sitting in front of my computer.
Right.
So give me a reason to get in traffic, get on the train, and come into the office, right? Because you're going to get more out of me if I am rolling over in my pajamas and I'm just, typing on my keyboard and I don't need to do an in-person session if I'm just doing admin work or making client calls. You're going to get more from me if I don't have to come in for those types of days. But if you need me, having some of that engagement, getting some of that face-to-face time, make those opportunities something that I consider commute worthy. Give people a calendar, not confusion. So make it predictable.
Love it.
From that same source, WTWCO, in 2025, 8 in 10 companies reported losing talent so far due to return to office policies. Back to you.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's a big thing that I think most companies who lost the talent, they've woke up to it. Now, I do feel like we're going 2025, we're in a new era again, and companies are reverting back to things from 2000. So
everything's in free fall right now.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
But it's about respecting how people actually work, not just how managers used to manage.
Right.
Because I think, things are constantly changing. And I think since 2020, that's what we've seen, that every year there's something new that we're experiencing that's impacting our work trends, our workplace trends.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you've also spoken out about, middle managers and middle managers being undervalued and undertrained. Why is this a blind spot? And what's at risk if it doesn't change in these companies who are getting rid of the middle management layer?
Oh my goodness. I really believe that middle managers are the unsung heroes because they're the ones translating corporate strategy into action, but they're also catching all the heat from both above and below. But here's the kicker about middle managers. We promote them because they're really great at doing, not because they're great leaders. And generally, when someone gets promoted, it's been because they've been great at doing something. And then we throw them into the fire, oftentimes with zero development.
Yeah.
And that's really a recipe for burnout, bad morale, and honestly, it's a toxic culture. If we don't train and support our middle managers, we lose the very people who hold the company together. Investing in them, it's not just nice, it's like necessary, because just because I know how to make widgets doesn't mean that I know how to manage people, or that I know how to manage my time, or that I know how to have difficult conversations, or that I know how to go from being a colleague to a manager, managing those same colleagues that I used to work side by side. So if you want a really strong culture, you really have to start by strengthening your folks in the middle. And that could look like by having manager-only peer groups where they can problem solve together. And that way they don't feel that they're feeling this sense of isolation. When I do group coaching for managers, there's such a relief that they have each other to bounce ideas off of across verticals, right? So if they're operating in silos and they hear how one manager has solved something in one department, it's really helpful for them to hear that in another department. So that's been really helpful. And then just that consistent leadership training on real world topics, like how do you give feedback without creating defensiveness? Or how do you handle conflict between direct reports, right? Like when two of your direct reports are feuding, it can infect your whole team. And if you don't know how to nip it in the bud, and no one's taught you that, you could impact the entire team and suddenly your whole team is at odds. So creating those opportunities and giving visible pipeline opportunities, like rotating your mid-level managers into executive meetings quarterly, maybe, so that they feel seen and that they can better understand some of the broader company strategies so that they have a more granular overview of the whole company so that as they grow, they have more of a strategic outlook of the company.
Absolutely love it. To support here, a recent McKinsey survey in 2025, right here in April, found that 44% of middle managers identify organizational bureaucracy as the primary source of negative experiences in their role, leading to overwhelming administrative workloads and reduced time for people leadership. Back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, let me jump in here and also say the other thing is there's been, a mass, strategy to save money. So we cut out managers, right?
Yeah.
We just cut out middle managers. So it's not even that they don't have the training. They don't exist anymore. And so what does that end up doing? That ends up giving either the supervisors more responsibility and they're not, they're not where they should be in the management level, if there even is supervisors or team leads, or all that middle management responsibility then goes to the directors who can't get anything done because let's face it, I'm the HR lady and I'm telling you, people are time consuming, right? And so we need to make sure we're not leading anybody in the organization to burnout, not just middle managers, but the above them and below them if they disappear. And the other thing I wanted to say, Cheryl, because you were saying this as well, is like, oh, let's just promote people and not train them. First of all, even though we're going to go ahead and train them before we get there, why don't we ask them if they even want to be a manager?
Yeah. And make sure they understand what being a manager means. Like, let's give them a definition of what being a manager means. I mean, I think most people think about a larger paycheck, but do they understand what the level of responsibility means? And as you just said, one of the trends that we're seeing within the last 90 days is companies coming along and stripping out middle managers, right? But those responsibilities have to go somewhere. So you can strip away the people, but the responsibilities don't disappear.
Yeah, exactly. And so they're either going to get done or they're not. And if they're going to get done, it's probably not going to get done to the quality that you want them to get done, because not everybody's willing or capable of working 50, 60, 70 hours. I mean, I see once in a while there's a big project and there's something going on. But if that's your norm, your culture is just burn people out, you better have a big bank account for workers' comp injuries, for probably OSHA violations, especially in, a manufacturing type industry or construction, healthcare, and then recruiting. And since 2020, recruiting is incredibly expensive. Even that, Indeed, that used to be really cheap, not so much anymore.
Absolutely.
Hey, let me ask you another question just about, employee turnover, since we're talking about that. You've called employee turnover a silent company killer, not just because of the loss of the employee, but what does it do to the people who stay? Can you break that down for us?
Sure, because, turnover just doesn't walk out the door with the person who leaves. It stays behind and it messes with your team's mindset. So I'm all about mindset. And when someone leaves, especially someone who was respected, it really shakes things up. And people start to wonder, should I be looking too? Am I next? And that doubt starts to spread really fast. It is contagious. And here's what most companies miss. It's not just about filling the empty seat. It's about rebuilding the trust and the stability that walked out the door with those folks. The people who stayed behind, they feel some kind of way because, like you just said, they pick up the extra work and they're absorbing that stress and they're watching how leadership responds. So if the leaders don't acknowledge that loss, and if they don't take care of the folks who are less, then what they're doing is they're silently encouraging the next person to start polishing their resume. And so how do you keep those who stay from just spiraling into doubt or spiraling into burnout? And these are two simple but effective ways that we've seen to work. One is hold a stay conversation, not just an exit one, right? So ask, what's keeping you here? And what would make you feel even more supported right now? And you should ask, don't guess. You should ask a question and then listen. Like really, really listen to what do you need from us right now? And I think it's also important to acknowledge the impact of the loss and then reset the expectations. So don't just pretend that everything's going to be business as usual. Recognize the team's extra effort. Give that recognition in a way that matters to the person. Some people like shout outs. Some people like gift cards. Do it for what works for each person. And then recognize that the team is working together and share what's being done to fill that gap and clarify what's temporary. So people don't feel trapped in a new normal that they didn't sign up for. I need to know, is this going to be 4 months, 4 years? Because I didn't sign up for this for 4 years. I can handle 4 months. But you need to be honest with me. And those two steps alone, I think, are going to go a long way in helping employees feel seen, valued, and most importantly, not forgotten after someone else or someone else have walked away.
Right. And let's continue this conversation too, because a few things that have come to my mind is, okay, if people are walking out the door because they have an option somewhere else, whether you did something wrong or not, they have an option somewhere else. You should be doing exit interviews as well of why are you leaving? And if there's some, harassment or just gross culture or whatever, if they're leaving and not looking back, they might actually tell you. Not everybody's going to tell you because they want to leave that opportunity open. So stay interviews, super, super important. Don't just ask the people that are leaving, hey, why did you leave? That's a little too late, but we still want to get that information. Exit interviews, very important. and employee surveys, or even if you're just doing some kind of like pop-up tools or something like that. But I love what you said, because I literally just said it this morning myself to a client. Don't ask the question unless you're going to listen to the answer. Like,
Yes.
don't ask about, don't do a stay interview. Don't do an exit interview. Don't do an employee survey. Don't even do a pop-up little, hey, yes or no, are things going good, unless you're going to listen to the answer. And when I say you, I mean your executives, because let's face it, as HR, we often, people think we're in control of everything, and we're far from it, right? So we need to make sure, executives, are you prepared to take action? Otherwise, I am not rolling out this employee survey. I am not asking people, how they feel. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think if you're not listening and prepared to take action, if you're not prepared to be intentional, people will shut down on you and they'll stop participating and they'll just go through the motions. And so you won't get real, authentic answers after a while, because they'll know that you're just going through the paces. Yeah,
absolutely. And since we're also talking about people leaving, unfortunately, there are these things called layoffs that are happening. And, always happen when technology changes, or right now it happens to be mostly political. But let's talk about layoffs. When a company does a mass layoff, should they also change executives around to reinforce company culture?
The old saying, it's the culture, stupid. It is the culture. It's always the culture. And if the culture isn't constantly changing for the better, if you are not realigning with the folks that you are bringing in so that the culture is improving, you've got a problem. And if you're not constantly checking on the culture and not aware, and being aware is being an active listener, rather, right? And so those surveys really matter, and taking time to visit the survey results and being mindful. And I will say this as a woman of color, if I was the only person of color on my team of like maybe 10 people, and you ask me to self-identify, I'm probably not going to self-identify on that survey, because then I know you know who I am. Even though you tell me that there are ways around it, I don't believe you. I'm sorry, I don't believe you.
I 100% agree too. I say the same things to my clients when they're asking me to do employee surveys. I'm like, why are we putting this question here? Why does it matter of that particular way? Why aren't we asking other things? And then why aren't we giving an option of says, I choose not to answer that. JC, I think you have stats related to layoffs.
Layoffs, they have a deep ripple effect. 74% of employees who remain after a layoff report extreme declines in productivity, morale, and a near complete erosion in trust in leadership. Back to you.
Mm-hmm. That's huge. It doesn't surprise me one bit. I mean, layoffs are
walking
awful.
on eggshells. They literally walk on eggshells. I've been through several layoffs at companies and was able to survive all of them. But I've watched the erosion of trust. I've watched people walk on eggshells, and it's really a very sad state of affairs to watch.
Yeah, it really is. And the other thing, just kind of looping this back in together as well, where we were saying before, if people were leaving voluntarily or they're leaving on their own, the people that can get a job are also having their one foot out the door, right? The people that are unemployable or less than employable, depending on where it's going, guess what? You're stuck with them now. The good people left because they could. The not as great people are still there. So, it's these things that we're talking about are just so important to be still focusing on company culture. No matter if the economy is doing good or bad, we need our employees, and we need our trained employees. We need our engaged employees. If you're thinking right now, I don't know if my employees are engaged, we really do need to be rethinking leadership and culture and work-life truth. So
I will challenge you a little bit on that. I'm sorry to interrupt why people stay. Like, a lot of people will stay simply because of their family dynamics, which is why at our company, we focus at Powerful Penny, we focus on at work, in love, and at home, because I find a lot of 30 to 45-year-olds will stay because of their children in school systems or whatever, and they don't want to disrupt the family life. And so they choose to stay because they are comfortable. And they don't want to disrupt the home life. And so that's why a lot of them will stay and not even go looking elsewhere because of that comfort level. And I often challenge my employees, if comfortable is the worst place you can be in your career. It is the worst place you can be because you're not challenging yourself and you're not growing.
Yeah, it really is. Thank you for that. Thank you for all of this information. The legendary Cheryl Grace, CEO, Powerful Penny. Where can our listeners find you and connect with you?
So I'm glad you asked. If you take away one thing today, let it be that leadership is not about just hitting goals. It's about how you intentionally show up. And so whether you're leading a team or leading yourself, I really try to make sure that our clients are intentional and be human. And for heaven's sakes, don't wait until you're on the struggle bus to get support. Get off at the next stop and call a coach. Call us. You can find us at powerfulpenny.com, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn at Cheryl Grace. And if you're ready to lead with purpose and power, we've got coaching programs that'll help you do just that. And you can click on working with individuals, or we work with corporations, and you can click on that link.
Love it. I'll make sure that your website link and your LinkedIn profile is in the information about this podcast. And everybody, in case you did not know that we're listening, Aurora Training Advantage has much more than just HR and management training courses. So make sure your finance department, your payroll department, project management, customer service, that they check out auroratrainingadvantage.com as well. In fact, coming up soon, we have a training, how to go from buddy to boss after a promotion, because this leads right into our conversation here of it's not all fun and games. It's rarely fun and games, but it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be not pleasurable. You can have a good time being a manager. So come check that out. And then we also have another one in May of delivering difficult performance reviews, which are not fun. But if you plan for these things, you can get through the day and everybody can be a win-win situation. Go ahead, JC, final words.
Yeah, with that training, really that's just, hey, fire them, right?
Yeah, no.
I need the training. I need the training.
Yeah, you need the training. You need to go back and listen to the podcast. No, I'm just kidding. Hey, Cheryl, thank you so much for coming today. JC, good seeing you. And everybody, we really do hope this information has been helpful. Thanks for joining us and take care.
Thank you for joining the HR Empowerment Podcast, brought to you by Aurora Training Advantage. We hope you've gained new insight and strategies to navigate the HR profession. We look forward to you joining us again on the HR Empowerment Podcast.